Hi, this video is for 7th grade history, section 12, chapter 12, section 1, the Aztecs. It's from this textbook. Excuse me. This should look somewhat familiar to you 7th graders. So what I'm going to do in this video, I'm going to summarize some of the, we're going to go over this section in 2 parts. So Tuesdays will be the first half, Thursdays will be the second half. So here we go. So the Aztecs settled in central Mexico. They were hunter and gatherers. That means in order to eat and survive, they would go and look for things and bring it back. And what year are we sort of talking about? We're talking about 800 years ago in the 1200s. And they began to come into the Valley of Mexico, into the mountains, and into what present day is sort of Mexico City. Now, how did they know? This is one of the questions in your Google Doc. There's a story about a legend, we would call it, this word right here where my finger is. And the Azteca people believe that their god, the sun god, or the legend says that okay, let me start over. Basically, people wanted to know, where should we make our home? Where should the Aztec capital be? So people argued, debated, oh, it should be here, in the mountain, in the beach, da, da, da. Okay. They decided that to go by the legend. And it said that wherever they saw an eagle, an águila, sitting on a cactus, that's where they would build their capital. If you know the Mexico flag today, there's literally an eagle on a cactus with a snake in its mouth. Legend has it that in the year 1325, they found that place. It was called Tenochtitlan to the Aztecas. Tenochtitlan, which is now Ciudad de Mexico, which is Mexico City now. The nickname was the place of the prickly pear. Remember, like I was saying, on the bandera, on the flag of Mexico, there's a eagle on a cactus with a snake in its mouth, and that has to do with the ancient Aztec people. It's not just random, it makes sense. So the Aztec people had a land of their own, but they had neighbors and they had other things to worry about. Let's keep going. So it's like if you've ever moved to houses, apartments, or condos, when you move, there's things that you got to get used to. The first thing about Mexico City or Tenochtitlan is that it was super swampy. In the United States, Florida, it's like where alligators and crocodiles live. It's really swampy there. So the Aztecs, they had to adapt, and they did. So they learned to construct chinampas, or raised garden beds on the lake. So instead of just moving and saying, forget it, let's get out of here, the Aztec people were smart, and they learned to adapt so that they could survive. They also found out how to grow corn, maize, squash, and chili peppers. And a lot of Mexicano food today incorporates those foods, and it makes sense because the ancient Aztecs did as well. They also hunted animals that lived in and around the lake. They also, we're not sure how many Aztec people lived because it was 800 years ago. None of us were alive back then. But they think it's about the size of Long Beach. About a little less than 500,000 people lived in Tenochtitlan. Now Mexico City is one of the biggest cities in the world today. Also, just like in many cultures, trading was very important to the Aztecs. And they had to trade for stuff that they couldn't get, which were wood and stone for building things, like buildings and houses and other things. They dug canals so that they could canoe as well. And they also built bridges too. Pretty cool, huh? Now let's go to the next thing. Just like in many cultures, excuse me, the Aztecs believed in class structure. Some people were more important than other people. This N-word, nobles, should be a word that you've seen a lot. And they also believed in a president, but they called it the emperor. The emperor lived a life of luxury too. Most people were not rich. They were called commoners. And sadly, there were some slaves back then too. Those were the people that they captured from other cultures or other people groups. They were prisoners of wars. And those were the people that did a lot of the hard labor, the building of stuff too. Also, the Aztecs did believe in religion too. Men mainly were farmers. of their own, or they farmed for rich people too. Women cooked the meals, babysat or helped raise the children, and did other house chores. Also, boys didn't go to school till they were 10, so that would be 3rd or 4th grade in America here. What did they learn in school? Religion and how to fight. Very different than now. And girls were usually homeschooled. They didn't get to go to school. Also, many Aztecs were very religious. They also believed in that, they believed in gods that helped them with farming. And they had about over 1,000 gods total. They would build temples, almost like churches or synagogues, we would call it today. And they would have like parties or ceremonies there for the gods too. What's even crazier, this didn't happen all the time, but sometimes they would kill the slaves to make the gods happy too. They also had like church services where they would worship the gods. This will be our last page for today. Okay, just like every other culture, they get really powerful, but then something happens and many of them die. Well, the same happened, same happened for the Aztecs. So they started to get big and powerful, and in the year 1502, so we're talking like 200 years after they became in power, Montezuma II was the leader of the Aztecs. This might look familiar because at Knott's Berry Farm, one of the roller coasters' name is Montezuma's Revenge, and Montezuma was an actual Aztec emperor. It's a real person. He started to have trouble, people dying, people getting poor, and he was very worried that other people groups would take over the Aztecs. In 1519, from the country of Spain, a Spanish explorer named Hernan Cortez, he landed in today Mexico, and all he cared about was gold and making Spain and him famous. Now, Montezuma didn't want to fight Hernan Cortez because they had horses and better weapons than the Aztecas too. What's crazy is Hernan Cortez was taken prisoner and he was killed in the fighting. But what happened to the Aztecas is the Spanish eventually won. You can pause the video here to read this, but I'll summarize it for you. Now, to win a war now, it's usually with weapons and guns and killing people, but they killed people because of their better weapons and armor, but also because of illness, what's going on in the world now, sickness. A lot of the Aztecs were exposed to germs and other things for the first time. And sadly, in 1521, 2 years after Hernan Cortez landed in Tenochtitlan, the Aztec capital and empire fell. Hope this helped. See you next time.